Guimaraes. Pass through, what a ball, Martinelli!
Carlo Ancelotti, he knows exactly what he's doing. They didn't have the best start, but they're getting better and better. And it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And they need those players to make a difference.
Oh, and a little bit of an error there. And Vinicius Jr. couldn't miss.
There is a shirt that has never been allowed to just be a shirt. Every country has a jersey. Brazil has an inheritance. For most footballers, pulling on the national colors is the dream. For a Brazilian footballer, it's a test, one written by men who retired before you were born. You are not just asked to win, you are asked to remind the world why it fell in love with this sport in the first place. Every touch gets compared to 1970. Every dribble gets compared to a man who danced through 5 defenders like they were standing still. Every smile on the ball gets compared to a magician who made the impossible look lazy. That is the real weight of the yellow shirt. Not the crest, not the stars above it, the memory. And for 20 years, that memory has been less of an inspiration and more of a shadow. A new generation arrives. The world asks the same question it always asks. Is this the one that brings it back? And more often than not, the answer has been no. Not because the talent wasn't there, because no one alive can be compared favorably to a ghost. This is the story of a Brazil that stopped trying to raise ghosts and started trying to win football matches instead. And at the center of that shift is a 60-something Italian who has spent his entire career doing the one thing modern football claims is impossible. He refuses to accept that a match is over before the referee says so. Welcome back to Ball Archive. This is the story of Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil.
Brazil people can say they are not as talented as in cups where they won. But I always say that a coach like Carlo plays a role. Yeah. You know, you could even feel after a bad match and after a draw against Morocco, it looks like a tsunami arrived. Not for Carlo.
Before we get to Japan, because we are getting to Japan, you need to understand the country this team plays for. Brazilian football fandom right now is not one audience, it's two. The first audience watches every match waiting to be disappointed. To them, every sloppy pass is proof this generation doesn't deserve the shirt. Every win comes wrapped in an asterisk. They only beat a small nation. That wasn't real opposition. This isn't the Brazil we grew up watching. For this half of the country, nothing this team does will ever be enough, because the standard was never really about football. It was about nostalgia. The second audience understands something the first one hasn't accepted yet. Nostalgia doesn't win trophies. The Brazil of 2002 isn't walking back through that tunnel. The game has changed. The physicality, the pressing, the tactical discipline of teams that used to be pushovers. If this generation is ever going to lift another World Cup, it will not be by resurrecting the past. It will be by becoming something the past never had to be. That's the tension Carlo Ancelotti walked into. Not a tactical puzzle, an identity crisis. And if there's one thing Ancelotti has built an entire career on, is staying perfectly still while everyone around him loses their mind. To really feel why this matters, you have to understand what those 5 stars above the crest actually cost. It is the only nation on earth that has never missed a World Cup. Every single tournament since the very first one in 1930, Brazil has been there.
Which country has won the most FIFA World Cups? It's not Germany. It's not Argentina. It's not Italy. Brazil is number 1. 5 World Cup titles. The only nation to win on 4 continents. At every World Cup since 1930, no one has matched 5 titles. Can anyone ever break Brazil's record?
That alone would be remarkable for most countries. For Brazil, it's the bare minimum. Showing up was never the achievement. Winning was the only currency that mattered. A 17-year-old named Pelé announces himself to the planet in Sweden, and Brazil lifts its first trophy playing football that looked to the rest of the world like it had been beamed in from the future. 1962, they do it again. Then comes 1970, widely considered by historians and fans alike to be the greatest football team ever assembled. A side so fluid and so joyful that it redefined what the sport could look like. Every kid who picks up a ball in Brazil is, whether they know it or not, being measured against that team before they've even learned to tie their boots. Then, the drought started to matter more than the trophies. 1994 brought a fourth title, built on steel rather than samba, and some purists never forgave it for being effective instead of beautiful. 2002 brought a fifth, carrying by a front three that terrified defenses across the planet. Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and Ronaldinho, players who made scoring goals look less like labor and more like art. And then, nothing. 2 decades and counting without lifting the trophy. 2 decades of near misses, humiliations, and heartbreaks, including a home semi-final defeat so brutal it's still discussed in hushed tones today. 2 decades of new generations being unveiled with enormous fanfare and then quietly buried under comparisons they were never going to win.
Best footballing nation in the history of the sport is
Brazil.
Thierry Henry. Oh, okay.
Sorry?
The best footballing nation in the history of the sport.
Samba, Brazil.
You have to go with the Brazilians.
Same answer?
Yeah, Brazil.
300 million people, that's a good start.
That's the inheritance Carlo Ancelotti walked into, not a blank page.
A pressure that's been building for 20 years, aimed at a group of players who had absolutely nothing to do with creating it. Ancelotti doesn't shout. He doesn't throw water bottles. His face barely moves whether his team is up 3 or down 2. Commentators have joked for years that you could show Ancelotti a photo of his team celebrating a trophy and a photo of his team getting relegated, and his expression in both pictures would look identical. People used to mistake that calm for indifference. It isn't. It's a method. Because Ancelotti has learned something most managers never fully accept. Tournaments are not won by the team that plays the most beautiful football for 90 minutes. They're won by the team that's still standing in minute 96. The team that doesn't flinch when the plan falls apart. The team that trusts its own players enough to let them fix a broken match without being screamed at from the touchline. That single idea, that belief, not tactics, is the deciding factor in the biggest moments, didn't start with Brazil. It was forged in Madrid. To understand what happened against Japan, rewind to the 2021-22 Champions League. Because what Brazil experienced in that World Cup wasn't new, it was déjà vu. Round 1, Paris. Real Madrid trailed Paris Saint-Germain going into the second leg, 90 minutes from elimination. Kylian Mbappe was tearing them apart. The home crowd had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that sounds like a funeral being planned in advance. Even the diehards were bracing for the exit. Then Karim Benzema decided the match wasn't finished. He pressed a goalkeeper into a mistake, punished it, and scored. Minutes later, he scored again, then a third, a hat trick, out of nothing, out of nowhere, out of a situation that had already been written off as over.
Benzema caused it, here's Vinicius, it's Karim Benzema! Good ball into Karim Benzema, it's in! Marquinhos with ball defending, oh he got it! Karim Benzema again! It's a hat-trick!
Madrid didn't outplay PSG that night. They simply refused to accept the scoreline as final. Round 2, London. Next came Chelsea, the reigning European champions. Another must-win, must-score, must-survive night. Madrid were staring down elimination again when Luka Modric produced a pass that didn't look like it belonged in the same sport as the rest of the match. Curled with the outside of his boot, threaded through a gap that shouldn't have existed. Rodrigo finished it. Extra time arrived. Benzema struck again. Survival again. Round 3, Manchester. Then the toughest test of all, Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, a team built to strangle games into submission through sheer control of the ball. With minutes left in the semi-final second leg, City had one foot in the final. The tie looked dead. And then, in the 90th minute, Rodrigo scored.
60 seconds later, he scored again. 2 goals in 2 minutes turned an impossible night into extra time. And from the penalty spot, Benzema finished the job for a 3rd time in a single campaign. 3 different European giants, 3 different ways of dying, 3 different ways of refusing to. People called it magic, people called it luck. But you don't get lucky 3 times against 3 different super clubs in the same competition. At some point, lucky stops being the right word, and method starts being the only honest one. And it didn't stop there. 2 years later, in the 2023-2024 semi-final against Bayern Munich, Madrid found themselves in trouble yet again. chasing the game deep into the second leg. Ancelotti reached for a substitute nobody outside the stadium was expecting to matter, Joselu, a forward who'd spent most of his career outside the spotlight. Within minutes, Joselu equalized. Then, almost unbelievably, he scored again. Another final. Another impossible comeback with his fingerprints all over it. By this point, calling it a coincidence had become its own kind of denial. This is simply what an Ancelotti team does when the walls close in. It doesn't collapse. It waits for its moment, and it trusts that the moment will come. That is the manager Brazil hired, not a tactician chasing 1970, a specialist in surviving the moments that break everyone else. Brazil's opening results at the World Cup were, on paper, exactly what they needed to be. Wins over Haiti and over Scotland, points on the board, progress secured, and almost nobody cared. Because for the skeptical half of the fan base, those wins proved nothing. Haiti and Scotland weren't the tests that mattered. Wait until Brazil faces a real opponent, they said. Wait until the pressure actually arrives. The victories were filed away as irrelevant before the ink had even dried. Ancelotti didn't argue with them. He never does. He let the noise exist on one side of the room and kept working on the other, because he already knew what was coming. And he knew exactly the kind of team that was going to test his side for real. Japan arrived at this fixture with nothing to lose and everything to prove, the most dangerous kind of opponent there is. They weren't there to admire the yellow shirt. They were there to suffocate it. From kickoff, the pattern was obvious. Brazil had the ball. Japan had the game. Every time Vinicius Jr. tried to find space, a Japanese defender was already occupying it before he arrived. Every time Brazil tried to build down the left, they ran into a double team that closed the width before it could be used. The rhythm Brazil usually relies on simply wasn't there. The confidence that comes with it started slipping too. Japan weren't just defending a scoreline, they were hunting a mistake. And in the first half, they got one. A loose pass in a dangerous area. A Japanese midfielder read it, drove straight through the gap left behind, and didn't hesitate. A low, driven strike into the corner. The goal Japan's discipline had earned. Brazil, 5-time champions, the only nation to appear at every World Cup in history, were behind. And for a few minutes, it stopped looking like an upset and started looking like an execution. Brazil's back line had aged. The passing lanes Japan had cut off in the first 10 minutes stayed cut off. Every transition Japan launched forward felt faster than anything Brazil could recover from. The pressure in the stands started curdling into something closer to panic. This is the real Brazil, the doubter said. Old, slow, finished. Everyone expected Ancelotti to react the way every manager is taught to react in that moment. Throw caution away, send on attackers, rip up the shape. He didn't move. There was no shouting in that dressing room, no finger pointing. Ancelotti has built his entire identity on refusing to manage through fear. He wasn't about to start in the biggest match of his tournament. Instead, adjustments, a change in structure, fresh legs introduced to open up passing lanes that had been closed all half. Brazil came out of the break in a more aggressive shape, and almost immediately, the questions being asked of Japan's defense were different questions than the ones being asked in the first half.
Japan almost humiliated Brazil again, but Carlo Ancelotti's halftime decision changed everything. Japan had already shocked Brazil once in 2025, and when Kaishu Sano scored stunning goal today, Brazil looked finished again. Japan defended with almost every player behind the ball, and Brazil couldn't create anything. But at halftime, Ancelotti changed the system and brought on Endrick. Suddenly, Brazil started flooding the box with crosses. Casemiro finally equalized with a header, and just when everyone was waiting for extra time, Martinelli scored in the 95th minute.
Crosses started arriving with real intent. The midfield started dictating tempo instead of chasing it. Japan, so comfortable holding their structure for 45 minutes, were suddenly being forced to defend facing their own goal, wave after wave, for the first time all match. And then came the goal nobody predicted. The same veteran who'd been blamed for the opening mistake. The same player half the stadium wanted substituted at halftime.
rose highest at the back post and powered a header past the goalkeeper. The man built for the biggest stage had answered the loudest critics in the building with the only thing that actually silences them: a goal, equalizer. And suddenly, the entire complexion of the match had flipped.
To Japan's enormous credit, they didn't fold. This wasn't a team that got lucky into a scoreline and then panicked when it evened out. This was, by a wide margin, one of the best performances Japan has ever produced at a World Cup. Compact, brave, and completely unintimidated by the badge across from them. Their fullbacks kept working defensively, even when their legs were clearly emptying. Their midfield kept its shape even as Brazil's pressure mounted. Their goalkeeper kept producing saves that had no business coming from a team supposedly playing out of its depth. For long stretches of the second half, it genuinely felt like Japan might hold on and complete the story football fans everywhere would have loved to see. The moment Japan finally broke through against one of the sport's genuine giants. They came agonizingly close, but deep into stoppage time, with legs tired and concentration stretched to its absolute limit, one loose touch near their own box was all Brazil needed. The ball was won back instantly. It found its way to a Brazilian midfielder who, rather than rushing the moment, took a breath, picked his pass, and threaded it forward with total precision. The finish that followed clipped the post on its way in. 95th minute, Brazil had completed the comeback. Here's the part where it's sitting with. Brazil did not play well for large stretches of that match. The first half exposed real, uncomfortable truths: an aging back line, a midfield that struggled against energetic opposition, an attack that went quiet the moment Japan stayed compact.
None of that disappeared just because the scoreline flipped. But that's exactly why the win matters more than a comfortable one would have. Because championship teams are rarely defined by their best 90 minutes. They're defined by what happens on the nights when nothing is working, when the game is slipping away, when the crowd has gone quiet, when every neutral watching has already written the postmortem. What separates teams that go home early from teams that go all the way is not talent. It's what they do when the plan collapses. And that has always been Ancelotti's real specialty. Not a formation, not a tactical innovation nobody's seen before. Belief. Stubborn, unglamorous, repeatable belief that a match isn't finished just because the clock says it should be.
This Brazil team will never be mistaken for 1970. It will never move like the Brazil of 2002, all flair and improvisation and joy that looked effortless from the outside. That version of Brazilian football produced some of the greatest highlights the sport has ever seen. And this generation was never going to replicate it, because no generation ever really can. What this team is building instead is something less cinematic and arguably more useful. Resilience, a collective identity instead of a reliance on individual magic. A team that can be outplayed for 45 minutes and still find a way to win the other 45. Maybe that's the lesson Brazilian football has needed to learn for 2 decades now. Stop measuring every new player against a man who retired before they were born. Stop demanding a remake of 2002 from a sport that has moved on tactically, physically, and structurally in every possible direction. The teams that win now do it by surviving, adapting, and refusing to break, not by recreating a highlight reel from half a century ago. And it just so happens that the man now in charge of this Brazil side has spent the last several years proving over and over in the biggest matches European football has to offer that this exact mentality works. People said Real Madrid's luck would run out eventually. It didn't. Not against PSG, not against Chelsea, not against Manchester City, not against Bayern Munich. 4 different nights when the story should have ended in defeat, and 4 different nights when it didn't. Brazil have plenty of questions left to answer. Bigger opponents are coming. The flaws exposed in the first half against Japan won't fix themselves. Nobody watching that first 45 minutes would call this the finished article. And that's worth being honest about, because the temptation with a story like this one is to smooth over the rough edges, to pretend a stoppage time winner erases everything that came before it. It doesn't. The same back line that got exposed against Japan will get exposed again if it isn't addressed. The same lack of control in midfield will resurface against a team with more quality than Japan had. Ancelotti knows this better than anyone watching from home. Calm is not the same thing as denial. Believing a team can win is not the same thing as believing a team has no problems. What the belief actually buys is something more specific than confidence. It buys time. It buys 95 minutes instead of 60. It buys a locker room that keeps trying instead of one that starts protecting itself the moment things go wrong. Tactics decide a lot of football matches, but in the moments when a team is genuinely up against it, a goal down, tired legs, a crowd starting to turn, tactics alone rarely save anyone. What saves teams in those moments is whether the players in white or yellow or blue still believe there's something left to win. That belief has to come from somewhere. More often than not, in Ancelotti's teams, it comes directly from the man on the touchline who refuses to look worried.
But if there's one thing history keeps proving about Carlo Ancelotti, it's this. Counting out one of his teams before the final whistle has never once been the smart bet. As long as there's still time on the clock, his teams believe there's still a match to be won. And in football, that belief, stubborn, calm, unspectacular belief, might be the most dangerous weapon there is. If Brazil carries that mentality all the way through this tournament, a sixth star might stop being a memory people talk about from decades ago. It might become the headline of this generation instead. Because in the end, nobody remembers how many times a champion stumbled. They remember that they refused to fall. Every deep tournament run has a version of this match somewhere in it. The game that looked like an ending and turned out to be a turning point instead. Spain had one in 2010. Germany had one in 2014. Argentina had one in 2022, on the very edge of group stage elimination before Messi carried them the rest of the way to a trophy. Survival, it turns out, is very rarely a straight line. It's usually one horrible night that a team somehow claws its way through, followed by the belief that carries them for the rest of the tournament. Whether this Brazil side goes all the way is still an open question, and nobody watching honestly knows the answer yet. What's no longer in question is whether they can survive adversity. They already have.
On the biggest stage football offers, against an opponent that gave them absolutely nothing for free, they were staring at an early exit and found a way out of it anyway. That's not magic. That's not talent alone. That's a group of players who, under the calmest manager in the sport, still believed there was time left on the clock when logic said there wasn't. Carlo Ancelotti didn't bring the ghosts of 1970 back to life, and he was never trying to. He brought something this generation actually needed instead. Permission to stop being compared to a memory and start being judged on what they do next. That's the story of a team caught between its own history and its own future, and the manager quietly trying to write the second one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to Ball Archive. We don't just recap football, we dig into the stories behind it. Until the next one, keep watching.